All right, so rolling on to game 3, 1-1 in the series. Tensions are probably pretty high. Sides were swapped for game 3. I believe the loser gets side select, so GOATED took red side. That seems to be the priority between the two teams to get the counter picks, no big prio picks, which is a bit surprising to me. But, we play on. So, bans are going to come out. Going to do the same thing I always do. Quick run through them. Viego, Jarvan, Vi. Griddle has a very clear theme here of taking away strong, engage, CC type junglers. And then GOATED. Looks like they missed a ban. I don't know if that was a ban typed in chat or not. Smolder is not on the ban list here, but it was Braum, Smolder, and no ban. Again, not sure if there was a third ban there actually or not. So now Griddle has the B1's blue side, right? And we'll reemphasize what I said in game 1 of, hey, blue side, you really want to focus on your team composition here on your power picks. You're going to be countered in a couple lanes. You really need to have a strong team identity and champions that are either lane neutralizers or can't get significantly destroyed by one specific pick, right? So generally we want to P1 either a strong ADC or a strong jungler. Can change depending on your team and the composition. In pro play, a lot of times they're going to be wanting like a Zero Orianna, champions that are considered lane neutralizers, and you're not going to see too hard counters to. We try to avoid that in lower elo than pro, I should say. Just like standard elo games where people do have random assassins in their bag, things like that. So Wukong is the B1 here from blue side. Not really opposed to this strong engage CC jungler, kind of fits all of your check marks. He's not necessarily the best jungler in the game right now, but for the level that we're playing at here and all intents and purposes going into game 3, a lot of champions have already kind of been removed. This feels like a good pick, especially with Jarvan, Viego, and Vi banned out. Other champions I wouldn't mind here are something like the Hecarim. I wouldn't mind something like either the Echo or the Diana. They're very strong right now with Dusk and Dawn. There's obviously plenty of comfort picks. Even something like the Zac can be picked here. The Elise. Elise isn't very good right now, but there's still, jungle, you have your flexibility. And hey, this is what I feel comfortable with. We can build our team identity around it. And we'll play the game around it. So Wukong, going to be a bit of a farming jungler until level 6, and will provide you strong CC, strong team fights. So you can kind of diverge your composition based on red side picks early. So we'll see how GOATED goes with their counter pick kind of style here on red side and how they deviate from their blue side drafts. So, God, this app has no fucking champions. This is Aurora. Okay. So they go R1, R2, Jhin, Aurora. So generally, also for context here, like I said, I am going. This is the first time I'm actually seeing this draft. I did see the champions and what roles they were playing, but I didn't see the order they were drafted in. So kind of a live blind opinion reaction here. So R1, R2, Jhin, Aurora, very not optimal in my opinion. You're obviously assuming that Jhin is going ADC, right? Wukong is a great pick into Jhin. Jhin has a very hard time dealing with a champion that can get over a wall, can dive, and start providing CC, right? Jhin wants strong, immobile champions that are on the bruisery side that he can kite, do loads of damage to without having to navigate too much. So very interesting early pick there into the Wukong. Aurora is also a very interesting early pick. Generally, Aurora is going to be played competitively in the top lane. Obviously, it's also a mid lane pick, so we're going to consider this one a flex pick. I would more often than not lean it going top lane these days, but you really can't rule it out. So, beneficial there on the red side of showing, very similar to like what I suggested last game with the Ziggs or the Lux, is you don't truly know where it's going, and you have to start picking more to your team's composition and what counters Aurora fundamentally, rather than a strict lane counter, right? So on Jhin and Aurora, both of them, you do want to just be kind of engaging on Aurora. You want to outrange, but they already have the Jhin. So I think with the Wukong, you just commit to that dive, make them very uncomfortable, hard to play. Aurora has a little bit more mobility than Jhin, but she's still very squishy, and if you can get on top of her, she has a very bad time. So Team Griddle is going to lead out with the Lysandra, and finish up with the Thresh. So going into game 3 of the Fearless, you are trying to get into your bag a little bit with the various champions you want to pick. I'm gonna say I'm not a fan of the early Lysandra. I believe this pick is an answer to assuming the Aurora is a mid lane, right? Not a bad champion in terms of, hey, we could lock down the Aurora, and it fits kind of our composition of like, hey, like we need to dive these champions, right? We need to hop on them. We need to hop on the Jhin. We need to hop onto the Aurora and make sure they can't, just free reign. We want to get all of our damage onto them. So I see what Griddle's going here with the full dive, and I believe last game the Lysandra was banned, so we are anticipating a Lysandra ban coming after R3, which takes away that dive potential from the blue side. With that being said, I don't think Lysandra should often be being picked here. She has too many hard lane counters when we still have the Aurora Flex top. Pretty much any control mage is just going to completely crap on Lysandra if played properly. Anyone that can outrange her, she's going to have a hard time into. So there's going to be, a Zoe pick here, right? There's going to be a Cassio pick here who's completely anti-dive, right? Imagine R3, they go Cassio, and you have a Wukong, Lysandra, and a Thresh. Cassio is going to have a great time. She goes Cleanse, and you have a very hard time playing. Same with a Syndra, right? She could push back and stop all that dive, and she's winning into Lysandra. Ahri is still, Ahri is out because it's Fearless. Whoops. Galio is available. That's really, really good peel into your current team comp. So we got to think about, like, if we're over-committing to our team comp too early and showing all of our cards, along with potentially giving a lane counter. Aurora is not bad into Lysandra in lane. I'd actually rather be the Aurora probably early game. She takes Cleanse, and it's a little bit harder for Lysandra to play. She can't really match the DPS too well. She does set up perfectly for the Wukong, of course, but I would expect that Aurora to be taking Cleanse if she is going in the mid lane. And like I said, we do have to consider this as a flex pick. So if we're committed to the Thresh, which I don't hate the Thresh pick. Not my preference here. We've went this whole series without Lucian Nami being picked. If we have that in our bag, I really think we do need to just be prioritizing Lucian Nami B2, B3 here and playing that kind of bot lane. But, I did say this is going to be from a theoretical standpoint, so I'm not going to go crazy on like, hey, like this is the best bot lane you need to be picking right now. I would really prefer like just the power picks coming in. So you have Aphelios Lulu. You have Corki with literally any support. Who else is still open? You still have Ez Karma. Ez Karma is going to go pretty well into a lot of their picks that they have. Very strong standard lane. If you really want to feel confident in your bot lane here, you could go something crazy like a Samira. Leona was already picked. Samira. There has to be one more engage open that I'm not thinking of. Apologies, I'm having a brain fart. Like Samira Pantheon, or Samira Maokai, or Samira Swain, or Samira Tom Kench, or Samira. I'm just naming random combinations here, right? Yunara hasn't been picked yet. She's a strong powerhouse. I would really just love to see a very, very strong bot lane here and let them expose their cards a little bit more, especially since they have that Aurora picked, right? You really want to see R3 and R4. That's going to show you at least like, hey, they picked a mid or a top laner, so we know Aurora is going to go into that other position. So that's the theoretical downside here, right? Even if this game ends up working out, a better drafted team will be able to exploit that. And then even though we have a good team fighting composition, we've already overcommitted to the dive comp. It's really, really hard to pivot at this point because the only real roles we have left are top and ADC. You could do something like Ezreal Jace, right? But Ezreal doesn't go super well with the Thresh. So the Thresh means we're really committed to some sort of going-in comp. So Breadside kind of has now the advantage of having a clear thematical counter. Blue side, when we're making this theme, if we want the dive comp, we don't want to overshow our hand, because we overshow our hand, now red gets thematical counter and champion counter. Blue side wants the thematical advantage here, which we have kind of exposed. Again, I will emphasize this is all in theories that we have bags that we could pull, a decent amount of meta champions for. If the feeling here was that, hey, like, the mid laner playing just didn't have the amount of champions he had the confidence with that he does Lissandra. That's completely okay, and maybe something to work towards in the future, because it's a weakness that better teams can exploit, and it's a long season, and it's always something to improve if you're motivated to improve that. I think that kind of covers my thoughts there. Yeah, really not a fan of this B2, B3 personally, but I can see the mentality, especially if we have a strong Thresh player. So red side answers with the Leona R3, which seems very standard here. It's a pretty good pick into Thresh. Jhin Leona is a strong lane, assuming that is going to be a Jhin bot lane. And now you have a good strong side or weak side bot lane, right? Jhin can strong or weak side, depending on how the game goes. You have a lot of damage with the Jhin Leona that's just always going to pop out. Blue side is going to kind of be forced to take a fighting lane here. So it is a interesting spot for blue side of, hey, we really want to fight and go deep and engage, but it's going to be hard into that Leona Jhin. I really wouldn't have minded if red side took a more like disengaged champion here. Like if they locked into like a Taric or a Poppy or a Renata, right? For Khan, something along those lines that, you know, they want you coming to them. I think it would be pretty hard for blue side. They would just be maybe opening themselves up for an ADC counter pick, but thematically, it would be a hard counter onto blue. So moving on to phase 2 bans. Blue side, again, you're really looking probably for mid lane bans. I mean, I guess you're looking for jungle bans. The problem is there's no real strong junglers that are going to hard counter Wukong. Wukong's not one of those champions that just gets hard countered. He just plays his game, you know, and he fights at level 6. No champion turbo stomps on him. He is just kind of a team comp based champion. Off the top of my head, if I really didn't want to see someone, it would be like, I don't know. I probably wouldn't want to see like a Jace or a Gwen jungle. I wouldn't want to see a hyper farmer. So I wouldn't want to see like Diana. I wouldn't want to see Gwen. I wouldn't want to see these junglers that really just get to sit in their jungle and farm simply because Wukong has a hard time ganking early. Once you have that level 6 and you can gank like the mid lane Lissandra, yeah, it's a bit of a different story. But you're going to get a little outpaced early. So blue side does end up looking like they focused on jungle bans. Sejuani. Interesting ban. Yeah, not bad. He is just the R bot. I personally would not lean towards banning a Sejuani simply because we are playing that complete dive comp. And Sej wants to kind of dive into us, and if we're assuming we have the better dive team, we are just winning that. But I don't hate the ban. Same thing with Pantheon, right? He gives them some early game prowess, so I could see that one of just, hey, like we want to ban out the point and click CCs and we just want to go in and fight. But I do think red side is benefiting more from some jungle duelists. All right, and GOATED ends up banning Vayne and Dr. Mundo. Vayne ban is pretty questionable to me. I don't think Vayne really has a winning Wayne here with the Thresh. Dr. Mundo is fine, whatever. Banning it kind of implies they're going to R4 top, unless they just have no picks in the bag for Mundo. It's also hard for Jhin and Aurora to deal with, but there are plenty of champions up R5 that could just shit on Mundo top lane. Obviously, Mundo is also a jungler. We're just assuming that Wukong going jungle. We haven't seen a top Wukong in a very long time. So I don't know. I think GOATED kind of threw a bit with that Mundo ban. I think they could really just R5 any Dr. Mundo counter if we ended up picking that. Probably my most classic is going to be like a Gwen, right? Gwen, Camille, Kled, Urgot, Irelia. Any of these like early game bruisers that could just jump on Mundo and fight him. So now we get to see GOATED expose their hand, right? They have Jhin, Aurora, Leona. They have to pick a top or a mid laner here to kind of expose where is that Aurora going? So this is where the curveball looks like it was thrown into the draft of, hey, they pick Kai'Sa. And now we're like, whoa, what the hell is going on? Because they have a Jhin and they have a Kai'Sa. So the implication now is one of Jhin or Kai'Sa is going solo lane. We don't know which one. So there are definitely Kai'Sa top angles. There are definitely Jhin top or mid angles. There's not really a Kai'Sa mid angle. That doesn't really happen, especially into Lissandra. I also wouldn't expect a Jhin mid into Lissandra. Although that one sounds more realistic than a Kai'Sa. And a Kai'Sa top blind sounds not great. So they really seem to be just digging into their bag at this point of like, where could things go? But now we have 3 squishy champions and a Leona, right? So we should really commit to this dive comp. They had the chance to counter us thematically. You had a very obvious, hey, Wukong, Lissandra, Thresh. We're going in. We are fighting. We're diving. The Kai'Sa does not do well against the dive comp. The Kai'Sa is going to get dove. Kai'Sa actually wants to play on his own team playing a dive comp, which is not happening with your Origin. So GOATED is thematically not a very good team right now, and it's kind of falling apart from draft. So now on blue side, right, we have our ADC pick. It's kind of blind. You don't know if it's Jhin or Kai'Sa. You want to pick a strong champion that is just good into both, plays well with Thresh, is not going to have any sort of issues here. And then top lane, we're blinding, right? So I'm always in the same boat of if we're blinding top lane, we want to match thematically. Also, we want to have a lane neutralizer is not just going to lose lane. So we're still talking Renekton, we're talking Sion, we're talking Rumble, Aatrox, any of those bruiser-esque champions that, you know, have a hard time just getting completely curb stomped in lane, and that have a good chance of playing a good game. So ADC, Tristana ends up being the pick, and for top, we end up going Sion. I really don't have many comments here. I think these are solid picks. I think personally for ADC, I probably would have rathered the Aphelios if I'm really, really trying to play like, if I'm trying to give like harsh criticism of like what champion you need to be picking here that's like better than Tristana. Like I would say Aphelios is slightly stronger than meta, but Aphelios also has a harder time into the Jhin than Tristana does, so you are playing a slightly more losing lane. I mean, again, that's pulling teeth, right? I think the Tristana pick overall here is strong. I think you could have also probably angled into like a misfortune maybe. Yeah. Corki's also not bad, but this really came down to, my guess is ADC preference. I think once they have Jhin, Kai'Sa, Leona, Aurora, you just need an ADC that has strong damage, strong laning, and a little bit of ability to dive with the team. So Tristana fits that bill pretty well. B5 for the top, I think I already talked about. Comfort bruiser, right? Sion's a bit more on the tanky side, which is completely fine. They have 2 ADCs in Aurora, so no matter where that Aurora is going, right, it's still kind of a flex pick because they haven't revealed top lane or mid lane. So if Aurora's going top, Sion has a little bit sad of a time early game, gets bullied, but that's fine. Any champion's gonna do. Aurora's gonna do it to any champion, and she's gonna have a hard time killing Sion. Locking in the Sion also sets up bot lane as kind of the lane for the jungler to play around, which is completely fine here. You really have a hard time playing around top lane unless we have a very good top lane, champion pool, or they've exposed their hand a little bit too early on the top lane. We also want to be using the Lissandra to dive, right? That is one of Lissandra's strongest tools. Is she can, if she can get Prio, she could dive bot lane very easily. Whether she can get, we don't know who she's playing against, so it's hard to really say so far. So I think just picking the Sion, staying safe, playing for the scaling team comp we got going on, which is very similar to game 2, seems like the good option here. And R5 for GOATED is the Skarner. So we have an idea of where everyone is going now. Skarner's the jungler. I apologize. I think I misspoke earlier saying they haven't exposed their mid top. I meant in terms of we don't know who exactly is going where, and we still don't really know who exactly is going where. They were holding their jungler in the bag for R5, probably just to give some sort of composition mesh out. And Skarner's not a bad pick. He gives some good disengage and good protection for his ADCs, but overall, I think GOATED draft is pretty doomed. I don't really see how GOATED wins this game. The only real way I see them having a chance is if their cheese picks Snowball, right? So if we assume it's going to be Aurora top because Jin or Kai'Sa top and a Scion makes no sense. Aurora top is a winning lane early into Scion, right? I think it ended up being Jin mid, so we'll just say, hey, it's Jin mid. That should make more sense than a Kai'Sa mid regardless. Jin mid early in the game should have, be fine against Lissandra. Lissandra should have a bit of push. I really expect her just to be a farming lane, and then Lissandra gets easier accessibility to move around the map because if Jin goes into Fog of War and runs into a Wukong, he's just going to die. So I guess GOATED just really wins off of Aurora stomping onto the Scion and bot lane 2v2 going well. Really, if I'm R5 here, I'm picking a strong early game jungler, and I'm just level 3ing my bot lane. I think you'd only win this game by cheesing, right? So I'm picking Rek'Sai, I'm picking Hecarim. We've been banning Jarvan every year, right? I'm picking Rek'Sai, I'm picking Hecarim, I'm picking, you name it, Shaco, dude. Something that can early game cheese and try to get my bot lane going, right? If my Kai'Sa Leona could snowball this game, that's one angle to victory. The Skarner, again, kind of dissuades that. He doesn't really have early game ganks. So I don't see really what goes wrong here for Griddle. But let's pretend the Skarner wasn't picked, right, in your Griddle, and you're thinking about how do I lose this game? My composition looks so good. It's the early snowball on the Kai'Sa. The early snowball on the Kai'Sa means they start shutting down your bot lane. Tristana has a real hard time when she falls behind. Thresh can get engaged on easily. Kai'Sa does a bunch of burst damage and could go pretty bad pretty quickly. Thankfully, you should have some good comeback opportunities with the Lissandra and the Wukong, but your team is pretty low damage, right? It is really just coming down to primarily Tristana as your damage source. So if red side could shut down Tristana, there is a real concern here of damage output. So it's hard to say like, hey, like that's something you should care about when they just ended up picking the Skarner. But in terms of like future learning, right? If I was to fix GOATED draft, if I only have an R5 pick, that is what I am doing. I am picking an early game cheese jungler. I am level 3 ganking bot. Since you should have, Tristana should have the push early with her bomb passive. Immediately getting behind you guys, trying to get a cheap early game kill or two, and then keep just spam ganking my bot. I'm not farming my jungle. I'm letting the Wukong farm up, and I'm just getting my Kai'Sa fed and hoping she can carry the game. Because there will be low overall damage output from blue side, and if red side can survive that initial Wukong Lissandra burst, they then do have the DPS actually to just keep up and kill you guys if Tristana is not pushing out enough DPS to kill their front line in time. So that would be my main concern for the draft. I still think it's very hard winning for Griddle, but if you're talking pregame in terms of how you should play the game, it's really, hey, like we got scale, we got team fight, we don't need to do anything crazy early. Do not take risks. Keep track of that jungler. Let's keep a clean, well-played game. And this kind of goes back to game 1 where I said, like, these early game snowball type team comps are much harder to play. Now, GOATED doesn't really have that type of team comp, but if they did go for that early game jungler on R5 here, that's what they're playing. They're playing the snowball either mid or bot early with some cheese ganks and then take their lead and make sure blue side never comes back from it. Which, if executed well, feels very oppressing to play against, but it's very rare that is actually executed well. So I think that wraps up my thoughts here, and I'm pretty sure this game was just a stomp for Griddle. Which sounds about right. Every GOATED draft got significantly worse, which is pretty funny to see, especially after they won game 1. But I think there were some really good learning opportunities here in terms of draft, and I think a lot of what I said actually reflected what happened in the game based off thematic natures it's kind of anticipated. So yeah, let me know if you guys found this helpful. Happy to do this in the future as well. Yeah, and thanks for watching.